KJ, to switch gears now and focus on the US men's national team. What did we learn from the recent friendlies and the Nations League games? And let's have a look at the strongest 11 now. If we were to pick today for the World Cup, there's 5 months to go until everything kicks off in Qatar. Who would be starting for the US? First up, Nick Mandola. What do we learn from those friendlies against Morocco and Uruguay and the Nations League games? Is there any big takeaways there for you, for Greg Berhalter's side? Because there was a few for me, but you go ahead first.
Yeah, listen, I think there will be plenty of time to dissect some problems with the team or some potential problem areas, but I do want to start with something positive. I like the spirit. I like what we've started. We started to see it maybe for the first time really blossom in that wild Nations League win over Mexico, where it was clear that these guys were fighting for each other. We knew they had a spirit within the squad. They've overcome some issues like whether they were as big in the team as they are in the media, or with everybody else, like the Weston McKennie thing, which really bothered me. Like, why just play them? Just play, But in these games, especially that last one, where they had every reason to just say, listen, we're going to beat El Salvador at home. We're going to beat Grenada. We'll get out of this Nations League. Let's just not get hurt on this terrible, 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 terrible pitch and go home. And instead, they got angry and they fought and they scrapped, and they did not play like a team that was like when Bruce Arena down in Cuba, and they're carrying players over puddles and making fun of the pitch and too big for it. They weren't too big for it. They were ready to fight. And that was really, really, really exciting for me. So I have a lot of questions. I'm worried about how things may go in Qatar, but in terms of whether or not Greg Berhalter's picking the best players or putting them in the best position to succeed, he's got them believing in each other. And as a U.S. soccer fan, it is extremely refreshing.
Yeah, I love that point there, Nick, because it is not something that I've really thought about, because we get so, as this generation has come through, we get so deep into the weeds on how they're playing, how each individual's used, what the overall tactics are, what the squad's going to be. And I think I, at least personally, have kind of overlooked that part. But that is something that when I think back to, the U.S. men's national teams of my earlier years, that was always the defining thing that existed. It was, this team will outwork any team that they come up against. They will be far less talented. They will work just as hard, and they will pull off some spectacular upsets sometimes. Sometimes they will get run off the field by supremely talented teams, but they always had that commitment. They always had the fight for themselves, but for one another as well. And then I'm talking, 2002 to like 2000, and even the 2014 team at the World Cup, I think, had a real aspect of that, because it was still the final days of Clint Dempsey and Jermaine Jones, and there were a number of players on that team that I think really embodied that fighting spirit. And as obviously the 2018 World Cup debacle that happened, there's a lost generation in there. Between 8 years is a really long time. And when you go 8 years between being in the World Cup, that's an entire almost international career for a lot of players. And so there is a veteran generation that doesn't really exist right now within the U.S. men's national team. And guys like John Brooks and Tim Ream, when he's in there, are the players that I think are kind of relied upon to bring that, the experience is not the right word, but just the perspective, if you will, to this younger team. And to see them, it is hard to remember that this, because we say it all the time, this is still a very young team. All of these individuals, they are aging at the exact same rate that we are. And, they are very, very young at this point still. But the fact that they have that already, I think, is so promising, coming from them, but also coming from Berhalter as well, because he has fostered that over a long period of time. And I know we question, well, why is Weston McKennie not in the team? Why are we not even calling Weston McKennie up? Why are we calling up this player instead of this player? But you can always point to something and say, well, I think I understand what he's trying to do there. And I think that the team building, the belief building, the mentality building aspect of being the head coach of the national team, I think he's taken that very serious. And I think he's gotten a lot of it right. And that has them, I think, feeling the confidence that they do now 4 or 5 months before the World Cup.
That's a great point, because they're clearly going to be one of the youngest, if not the youngest team at the World Cup on average starting age, which is going to be an incredible experience, not just for this team now, but in 4 years after that, and the 2026 World Cup as well. That's going to hold them in very good stead for that tournament. Okay, so the mentality is looking great. What about tactically on the pitch then? Are the biggest issues still the same issues we've had for, 6 to 12 months now? Thinking centre back, it's basically Walker Zimmerman's in, and then if Miles Robinson is healthy, he's in, or it's Aaron Long. Carter Vickers got some good minutes in this one and just signed with Celtic a long-term deal. And then up front as well, right? Haji Wright come in. Bill Harter had some interesting comments about him not potentially taking his opportunity, which I thought was a little bit harsh. And it's still no one's really stepping up in those two positions, right, Nick? I mean, is there anybody else you'd want to try in these last two games in September before the World Cup? Do you think Carter Vickers deserves more minutes? Anybody else up top? Because time's running out, and those are two pretty big areas for the US to figure it out with just, 180 minutes to go until they kick off of the World Cup.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down with Greg Berhalter, and I wish I could, and just kind of have a pop with him and have these discussions about, well, what's the plan now? Is it still possession, right? Is it still, because when you talk about making these decisions about who's next to Zimmerman, who has become a much better passer over his years, are we valuing possession? Because then I don't understand why Aaron Long is out there. And it makes me rethink whether Matt Turner or Zach Steffen plays, because Matt Turner is a superior shot stopper, but Steffen is better with his feet. So I just kind of want to know what's the plan here, because I don't want to make it sound like they're disorganized, but it seemed like as he adapted spirit-wise, as he's adapted chemistry-wise, this is where all my questions are. Because the best passer on the team at center back is still in the pool is still John Brooks, given his age and where he is as a center back. I understand if maybe you don't want them, but then are you telling me that the plan is different now when we have the ball, what we're trying to do when we build with it, because we have Tyler Adams? Is he dropping between the backs instead of coming from off to the right, which was the initial plan? And I wonder in his heart of hearts if he has had to make some sacrifices and he wants to keep playing to what he talked about, because what he preached is the future of U.S. soccer. We have more technical players coming in and growing and all that. But has he had to kind of adapt? And in his head, he goes, I'm going to keep talking about these things, but we're going to get pragmatic and we're going to be gritty and we're going to, Aaron Long is going to kick the living crap out of Harry Kane. That's how we're going to try and win. Maybe that's the plan now.
Maybe that is the plan. And maybe that feeds into the point you made at the very start of this in terms of the mentality, the chippiness, the edginess, the fact they're scrapping away. And then they can maybe, not to disrespect some of the former US teams, but I'd argue this is the most talented technically that the US has ever had, especially in the final third of the pitch. So then they can win the battle and learn how to do that side of things. Technically, then Bill Harter's ideas and philosophy kick in midfield in the final third. So, it's really interesting. Maybe we can grab a beer with Greg and get him on the show one time. Who knows?
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.